Hey everyone, welcome to Sweetcast. This is Clint as always, and I want to talk specifically about, evaluating Comicsgate. Is it good? Is Comicsgate good for comics, or has it all over been a net negative? Now, spoiler alert, I think that Comicsgate is probably the best thing that's happened to comics since, a really long time. I think it's a really great thing that happened to comics, especially for indie comics. I think it's the best thing that has ever happened to indie comics, period. I don't think there's a better time for indie comics than there is now. So now that you know my opinion, I want to go over some of the specifics and why I got to that conclusion. And there is some criticism of Comicsgate for a few different reasons. And so, we'll go over those together, and I want to know what you think. But last but not least, Downcast. This is my comic book. Speaking of a great time for indie comics, this is launching tomorrow, which is April 2nd. So I guess if you're watching this on April 2nd, it has been launched now already. Tuesday, April 2nd, Downcast is being launched. It's a really, really fun book. It's about blue-collar teens that use the power of gravity to fight a corrupt city in order to save their father's life. Really fun. The city's floating in the air, the whole thing. And there's jet bikes, there's shifting of gravity, and the action and intrigue, and a lot of fun. I'm really excited to get this out to you. So don't forget to sign up for the mailing list below. This is your last chance to do so. Okay, so I've noticed on Twitter there have been not so much anti-Comicsgate, and I haven't been following this all too carefully. Honestly, I've been just and I'm not doing this on purpose. I'm just ignoring the haters more, only because it just doesn't matter. It hasn't appealed to me. Sometimes it's fun to get into the fray a little bit. It's tempting, but honestly, it hasn't been. I've just been ignoring it. But I have seen some responses from Ethan Van Sciver on Twitter to some of the people that have been very critical of what Comicsgate is, at least right now. And I'll let him explain it. He says, there's a weird group of former CGers, that's former Comicsgaters, who have been trying out an interesting tactic of blaming me for the failed crowdfunding campaigns of smaller indie creators, I guess because I'm so successful. This is supposed to frustrate me and make me walk away from helping. It won't work. Now, I will say I haven't looked into this enough to even have an idea. I don't even have a guess who these former Comicsgaters are, and I really don't care. It just doesn't matter. But I have seen criticisms about the fact that some campaigns have been so wildly successful and some campaigns have just fallen flat. This kind of thinking always bothers me because it's anti-capitalism. If you're starting any business, if you look outside, let's say that you want to build mailboxes or something, if there's such a business, I'm sure there is. You could go down the street and see all of the houses that have mailboxes, or you could drive down the street and look at all the houses that don't have mailboxes. And when you do that kind of thing, you're judging the market depth. You're judging how many sales are possible, and you're giving yourself a limitation. If you're only looking at the ones that don't have mailboxes and you're looking at them as your potential market, and everybody that already has a mailbox is not your customer, that is outside of your realm, that is a really poor way to think about business. Drive down the street and look at every single house. Mailbox, no mailbox, it doesn't matter. Every home is a potential sell, at least one sell. Maybe it's split up and they've got a basement apartment or something. There's 2 mailboxes. Who knows? But if you look at things as the market could be, people that you could sell things to, that's a much more healthy perspective. And that's how you can become more successful at business. Not everything is competition. That's not really how it works. You're not in direct competition with somebody else. And for comics, this is how it works. You might have a market that's relatively limited, but you'd also want to look at what kinds of people used to buy comic books and don't buy them anymore for one reason or another. Might they be able to be convinced into buying your comic? Absolutely they can. And it's also really rare that if you have somebody that's interested in buying indie comics, that if they see two great comics, they're only going to pick one. If they see two great comics, most people are going to be really happy to buy both. Now, that's not money that people dedicate just for comics. Often it'll be, maybe they would have spent it on buying a pizza or something. It doesn't matter. The point is, if they see something that they want and they're willing to allocate money that they have right now to get that comic book, it doesn't mean that that money is being taken out of another creator's pocket. That's not how the real world works. That's not how economics work. Now, don't get me wrong, there is still competition. There's something to be said for competition. If somebody is only buying Marvel comics, for example, they're only buying them through one avenue, and they're not ever going to crowdfunding sites to look for comics there, they're going to be harder to reach. You are in a you're having a competition with them, but you're also having a competition. Let's say someone that enjoys comic books, but they also enjoy, we'll say Magic the Gathering. They could spend a lot of money on Magic the Gathering that they're not spending on comics. You see, it's not just comics to comics that are competitors. In fact, I would argue buying comics that you enjoy actually leads to buying more comics because you had a good experience and you want to come back for more. All right, so Ethan continues. I'll always use my platform to promote the work of talented indie creators. It's my privilege to be able to do so, and I love seeing them get funded and get to make their comic. That's my reward. I don't get paid for this, and it's plenty. Okay, so getting on his platform, this has been a really big thing because I think partially because a lot of people are hoping that that's the golden ticket. You get there, you get your book in front of a lot of people, and therefore they're going to buy it. The truth is there have been a lot of projects that have gone on Ethan's stream, and they haven't gotten funded, or they may have gotten funded, but it's been pretty underwhelming compared to some of the really big ones. That's because marketing and advertising is not the only key. Part of marketing, like a big part of marketing, is product. Right? They have what is it, the 3 Ps? I'm trying to remember back to college. But product is one of those things. If you have a product that sells, it's going to sell better, and you're going to amplify the sales because of getting promotion, getting out there in front of people. If there's, maybe not such an appealing book, then it doesn't matter how many people see it. It's still not going to be all that appealing, and your results are going to be underwhelming. This shouldn't surprise anybody. Okay, it continues. You can call me names. You can tell everyone I have a Hollywood-sized ego. Maybe not. I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, but I do have an ego. I like being me. And you can try to gaslight these Comicsgaters into not accepting my help, but I won't stop. No amount of creepy SJW behavior will work. This is weird. If somebody is trying to convince you that you shouldn't go on Ethan's stream or anyone's stream for that matter out of principle, like you're a sellout or something, that is weird. The point of selling comics, the making comics, is to get readers to see them. If you had the chance to get on every single, I'm not just talking about Ethan's stream, if I can have you on my stream to promote your book, I want to do that. Because it makes me feel like I'm doing my part in the community. I understand the feeling of having somebody come onto my much smaller YouTube channel and seeing the numbers move when we refresh their campaign. That's a really, really great feeling, and it doesn't hurt me in the least. In fact, you could say that it helps me because more people want to watch the platform. More people are excited to, participate, and I think that's healthy. Now, if you, I don't know, I guess if you don't want to be on Comic Artist Pro Secrets to promote your book, but you might be interested on going on Sweetcast, for example, or maybe even that's too far. Maybe no Comicsgate related channels, and you just want to be able to post it up on Indiegogo and just let it do its thing. That's fine. I hope that you brought a massive audience with you, but the question is, are you better off not having gone to those Comicsgate outlets, or are you better off, doing whatever you've done before and adding Comicsgate into the mix? Of course, you're better off getting on as many streams as you possibly can and getting in front of as many people as you possibly can. Okay, continuing on. Ultimately, young creators have to learn to market and promote themselves on their own. This is true. I've said this from the beginning. You cannot rely on anybody. You cannot expect anybody to give you an audience. That's not how it works. Now, thankfully, I don't think most people think this way. I think the reality is most people know it's going to be hard work and you have failures still. I failed a Kickstarter campaign a few years ago. I know it's a terrible feeling. What I learned from that was that I needed to be more aggressive with marketing my campaign well before in advance and building interest and engaging interest and making the best product that I possibly could. So there are always going to be failures. That's how it works. That's what it looks like when you don't have a gatekeeper. Heck, even when there are gatekeepers, you still have failures that are very public. But in this instance, you're going to have public failures. But it's determined by the market. Nobody else but the market. And the more that you can market and promote your own stuff, the better chance you're going to have of that market accepting your thing. Okay, I'm going to skip down to this one. He says, you can do this. You can create and market your own stories and art. And if you're clever and good enough, you can succeed gloriously. Stay optimistic, stay eager, stay Comicsgate, do something outstanding. Frog Shark Rainbow EVS. Okay, so you get the idea. This doesn't mean that everybody is going to succeed all the time. There's still always going to be failures because that is what it takes to get on the route to success. I think it's very unlikely that any writer, any artist went out there with their very first project and just hit a home run. That's very unlikely to happen. Most of the times, the successful project that you're seeing, it might seem like someone's first published work, but they've done other things in the past. They've done lots of writing. They've done lots of art. They've already had lots of failures. They just might not be so public. And sometimes they've had many public failures. That happens. So I commented, I feel motivated, and Ethan said, you're doing everything right. That feels good. And this got me thinking. I used to think that it would feel like winning the lottery. Like, oh, if I finally got accepted by Image Comics, back when I was really trying to get into Image, if I finally got accepted by them and they'd publish something, it would just feel like winning the lottery, and I'd be so amazed and, emotional and all that kind of stuff. The truth is, if you've put in the right kind of work, it wouldn't necessarily be a surprise. And I'm starting to learn that. Now I feel ready for my campaign. I'm not surprised that it's going to be successful. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know exactly how successful it's going to be. I'm going to push and do my darndest to make it the best I can. But I'm totally at acceptable time to be successful. It's a good project, and it genuinely is ready to be successful. All right, so here's one more question, different, same topic, different, I think, thread. He says, how are my Comicsgate crowdfunding campaigns performing, the ones I support and promote? How are theirs doing? Compare then and now. So that's a good question. I do want to compare what has happened, what has changed. There have been some really successful Comicsgate funded projects. There have also been some that have been incredibly underwhelming, or they have been failures. But let's pretend there was no Comicsgate. Let's pretend there was no Comic Artist Pro Secrets. Let's pretend there was no Sweetcast. Let's pretend there was no Douglas Ernst. I mean, name your list of people that are involved with Comicsgate. Let's pretend none of it was there. How good would you be doing? Well, this isn't hard to look at. I actually looked, can just look at Indiegogo success rates, and it's comparing Indiegogo with Kickstarter, and you can see some percentages here. Now, don't be confused by the 17.1%. That is for fixed funding goals, and most campaigns on Indiegogo are actually not fixed funding. Mine happens to be fixed funding because I legitimately need the amount that I'm asking for in order to make the book. But I still think that we can get a pretty good idea here. On Kickstarter, 43.4% are successful. Okay, and then we can go with the 17.1% for Indiegogo, though take it with a grain of salt because they have most of them, 95.6%, are flex funding goals, which means if you ask for $1,000 and you only get $500, you're still going to keep that $500. Okay, so those results show a lot of failures. Whose fault is that? Is this Kickstarter's fault that there are so many failures when crowdfunding comics? I don't think so. If we look at IndieCron and I looked at the all-time list to find everything that's in here, I'm going to put a few disclaimers out there right now. One being, I understand that IndieCron right now is not a full comprehensive list of every quote-unquote Comicsgate project. I realize that that is the case. However, as far as I know, this is the best determiner to help me compare Comicsgate projects versus other projects. So I counted all of them up, and again, it's possible that some have been removed after they failed. I don't know exactly, but there were still a lot of failed projects on here. I added it all up and I did the math, and what we're left with is 68%. Yes, I Googled it just to make sure. My wife's like, you could just divide it, but yeah, that's why she was a math teacher and I wasn't. 68% is the success rate for books that have been listed on IndieCron. Not all of these, not even close to all of these, were promoted on Comic Artist Pro Secrets. A lot of them were promoted on IndieCron. A lot of them were promoted on other sites, Twitter, wherever they were still failures. They were still wild successes. But that didn't change the fact that the success rate is higher than Kickstarter and Indiegogo in general. So you tell me, are indie comics better off with or without Comicsgate? One last thing here to make my point. This is a great book. I had Michael Derrick on my channel. This is a book called The Abductables. It's also done by Ebi Canales. He's the artist. As far as I know, my understanding is these guys never went on a Comic Artist Pro Secrets to promote their book. Michael did come on to Sweetcast, and I know he was getting out and trying to promote as much as he possibly could, and they did a great job with it. Lo and behold, they got funded. They were successful. Could they have done this without Comicsgate? It's impossible to say. I think that the project looks good, but they were able to get in front of the eyes of so many people because there's such an awesome network of indie creators put together, and people are helping each other out. They're trying to help promote things. This gets more eyeballs. And so if you are coming to Comicsgate with a project that has the potential to get funded and you're working your tail off, then there's no reason why you can't get funded as long as you've put the work into it and as long as the market likes the book that you're putting out. Now, I hope to see their total funding goal get even higher. Their total, I'm sure it will. They still have 7 days left, and I don't know about an in-demand store or anything like that. But at the end of the day, this is a successful project. They reached their goal, and they did it without going on to Comic Artist Pro Secrets. They were absolutely capable of doing this. So I get really tired of hearing about, what makes a crowdfunding project successful and what makes it unsuccessful, and pointing fingers and making the blame, whatever. The truth is that it's difficult. Getting into comics is very difficult. It can be very expensive, and crowdfunding can be extremely stressful. That doesn't mean, however, that it's better to go without Comicsgate. Feel free to do whatever you want, but I'm convinced that Comicsgate is the best thing that has happened to indie comics, and I am really excited to see where the future takes us because I think it's only going to get better. So I hope that you have thoughts and comments, because I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and this is your last chance to sign up for Downcast for that mailing list so you can see all of the perks. So thank you very much, and I will see you next time.